Hello everyone and welcome to Callsign Charlie Models. It is time for another inbox review, and today we will be doing the Trumpeter 1/32 scale TBM-3 Avenger. Now, earlier in the channel we did do the TBF-3 Avenger, and today we're doing the TBM. The only difference between the two really is the manufacture of this aircraft when it was being produced during World War II. The TBF was produced by Ford Motors, and then the TBM was made by General Motors, just for the assistance of the mass production that these things were being done during World War II. They did two separate manufacturers, and luckily during that time everybody was able to come together for a single goal and put their differences aside, and so we get these two different aircraft but the same aircraft. We're going to see if there are any differences when we get into the kit. But starting off with the total length of the kit, we have a length of 385 millimeters, which is about 15¼ inches by 526 millimeter wingspan, which is about 22½ inches. And that is with the wings extended. Now, with the wings folded, you'll be able to save up some shelf space with that option. So we have a total plastic parts count of 490 plus parts. We do get metal aileron and flap shafts, and we also get photo-etch parts and some film parts for this kit. So again, nicely done with all the parts on here. It's going to look absolutely lovely when it is all done. Going with the top box art, we have a nice painted picture right here of the aircraft flying around doing some bombing or something like that. The pilot in the artwork might look a little bit rough. I'm being a little bit nitpicky there, but I mean, for the most part, you cut off this portion right here and you're going to have a nice piece of wall art if you choose to do so. So we go off to the side right here, and we have a nice little history about the TBM-3 right there. And then we have our first color option, which is white 89 of VC-94 USS Shamrock Bay, early of 1945. And then on the other side, we have the other paint scheme of white 2 of VT-51 USS CVL-30 San Jacinto, George H.W. Bush, summer of 1944. So this is the aircraft that President Bush flew during World War II. So we're going to get the box opened up with typical Trumpeter fashion. The box is going to be nice and tight and fit. Hopefully I can get this off. There we go. And again, the box is absolutely packed with all the plastic and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything pulled out and set off to the side, and we can start going through the instructions, decals, and all the plastic. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Alright, so we're starting off with the instructions, and we have the standard Trumpeter instruction booklet right here. This is for item number 02234, and again we have the read before assembly and the legend of symbols located on the front. Then we open it up again, we have our parts call out right here. All the numbers are easily legible on those there, and then we open it up and we are starting off the kit, starting with our engine and our firewall for our engine right here, getting all that done. It looks like it's going to be a fairly nicely detailed engine. We'll have to see when we start looking at the plastic, but everything on the instructions looks like it's going to be fairly nicely detailed, just adding in like your lead wire for your spark plug wires, and you'll be a-okay with that. Because after that's all done, we are moving on to our exhaust pipes, getting all those on. I'm not sure if these are going to be hollowed out or drilled out, so we'll have to check that out when we get into the kit. But we're adding a bunch of accessory components and everything to our accessory compartment right there. After that, we're working on our instrument panel. It does have a plastic, then a film, and then the clear part right here. We'll have to see if the clear part has the dials with the glass faces or if they're drilled out, which it kind of looks like these are going to be the drilled out ones. Alright, we also do have a bunch of PE to add in for our levers and such going on in there. After that's all done, we are working on our pilot seat. We do have photo-etch seat belts if you're a fan of those, have at it. I'm going to be getting some aftermarket seatbelts for this kit because I do not like photo-etch seatbelts. Alright, then moving on, we're working on our cockpit assembly, working on the side consoles right here, adding in some switch panels. Then we have another piece going on the back side with our headrest and a couple other parts right there. After that, continuing on with our cockpit assembly, and then we're getting our cockpit attached to our engine, along with our throttle and flap levers and all that with PE going on there. Alright, so moving right along, we are working on our electronic equipment cabin, and then we are continuing on with our electronic equipment, and then moving on to our bomb bay. We have a full detailed bomb bay right here, getting all those on, and then we do have the option of a fuel tank or a torpedo to put into the bomb bay. Alright, so then we are moving on to installing the fuel tank, the torpedo, or we also do have the option of putting some bombs in the bomb bay as well. After that, we're getting the flight deck, engine, and all that attached to our bomb bay and all that going on. And then we are starting to work on our aft gunner section right here, again with the photo-etch seat belts going on, and then another box going on the back of the seat as well. After that, we're working on our aft gunner machine gun, getting that all assembled. Looks like it's going to be fairly nicely detailed with the turret going on. As you can see, all that going right there. And then we have our tail wheel, a little bit all over the place with this kit, if I may say. But after that, we are working on our fuselage. We have a few detail parts to throw in, with including our tail hook right there. And then for our right fuselage, we have a control panel going in with a couple other boxes, and then our bomb bay doors going on right there. After that is all done, we are finally getting our fuselage halves together. We're putting in all those sub-assemblies going on there, along with our rudder, which it will be movable with these shafts and PE pieces for the rudder. Okay, moving right along. After that, we are adding in a door, some clear parts, a couple other parts, and then we have some more bombs to put onto the wings if we decide to do that, and or a fuel tank right there. Then we're attaching our bomb bay doors to our fuselage. Working on our engine cowling, we do have a couple pieces of photo etch going there, and then our cowl flaps going on. We do have the option of having it in the open or closed position. Then we're starting to work on our flaps and ailerons going on there, and also our wing fold assembly and our guns going on right here. Alright, now we're working on our outer wings, getting those all done. We do have a lot of detail going on with our gun section right here, and then also our flaps going on right there. And then we're just going to repeat it for the right wing as well. Alright, up next we have our instrument combing going on, and then we have our engine cowl going on, and then our wings. Wings are in the extended position right here. We'll have to see later on in the instructions if it shows you how to fold them. Alright, and then after that, working on our landing gear, and then our tailplane going on right here with our left and right horizontal stabilizers. Then we're adding in a bunch of lumps and bumps and a couple other pieces to this right here. Then some rockets and bombs going on if you choose to do so. And then we're adding in our clear parts right through here, as you can see, all that. And then moving forward, we do have the option to have the wings folded with this one, and it shows you at the very end. So definitely going to be, again, flipping back and forth. We do have these two little doors here and a little bit of rope to go and help tie down the wings right there. Alright, so up next, our decals. Decals look okay. The national insignia look good. You have the Jenny decal right here for the VT or V, which one is it? The VC 94 right here in the glossy sea blue right here is that one. And then you have Barbara 3, which is the one that President George Bush flew on right there. And all these decals are doing pretty nice right here. Again, all the stencils and everything look nice, and they should go down fairly well. Alright, so up next we have our color callouts and decal location placements, and we have the two different versions right here. TBM-3 White 2 VT51 on board the USS CVL-30 San Jacinto, summer of 1944, right here with the tritone right there. You can see looking very nice on that one. And then we have the top and bottom and left and right profile of the White 89 of VC-94 on board USS Shamrock Bay, early 1945, painted the glossy sea blue overall. Then on the reverse side we don't have any. So some people have, one of my friends have stated that their TBM did not come with paint instructions, so double check your instructions because these were located inside the instructions. Alright, so first up we have some black parts, black plastic parts. Not sure what these are for yet. Not much detail to them. There are a couple ejector pin marks on the reverse side that you're not going to see. I think these are for the wing fold area right here. And then a few other very small detail parts right there. Then we have the clear part for our turret that goes on the top side. Again, nice and crystal clear for the clear parts. No issues with that. No scratches or scuffs or anything on here. All looking very nice. You're definitely going to want to get a paint mask for this because there are some very complex curves in here. But if you don't want to get a paint mask, the framing around here is raised up enough so you should be able to get a good guideline for carving your paint mask. Alright, so now we have our photo etch fret. Again, very nice. This one folded up on me inside the box, so I'm going to have to get it a little flattened out. Just put some heavy books on it or something like that to get that flattened back out. But we have our grills, our wing fold area right here, our flaps right there, and then all the other pieces like our seat belts. Seat belts look okay for photo etch seat belts. There are a little bit of buckle detail in there. And then we have our grills right here. On the reverse side we just have a blank piece of cardboard, and the photo etch does feel typical of Trumpeter, pretty thick. Alright, and then we have another photo etch fret with our hinges for our flaps and ailerons and rudder and all that, so that's how that's going to look. Then we also have another tiny wheel right here, which I'm not sure what that piece is for. Then on the other side we have our film for our instrument panel right there. Alright, so up next we have the clear part for our instrument panel, and here's where it kind of baffles me on why they do this, because they have a clear part right here, but all the dial faces that would be glass are hollow. There's nothing in there, so you're going to have to go in with some UV resin or the ultra clear glue or however you make your dial faces to add that glass look to it, because for some reason they drilled all of those out right there. Now for the instrument panel, the detail on it, the detail does look pretty nice. You do have some raised switch detail on there, so again, pretty nice detail, minus the fact of all the dial faces are actually drilled out versus being one solid clear piece, which would actually make sense on this. Also, we have our little piece of rope right here for tying off the wings. If you don't want to use that for tying off the wings, you can use it for another diorama. It's a nice piece of thread. And then we have our engine cowl right here. Get zoomed in some more so we can see. I'm hoping that you can see the panel lines and rivets on here. It's kind of odd because we do have the raised mold seam right here from going around the bend on both sides, but also around the front edge right here. Back here is recessed kinda, and then up here I do have like a little raised lip that I'm going to need to sand down on that, and we do also have some rivet detail on the very front edge of this, so that's nice. But some of the recessed panel line detail, especially around the front right here, is a little bit off. It's a little bit shallow. It goes from recess to positive, back to recess. Definitely, like on this one right here, I'm hoping you can see how that looks on that. Alright, and then we have our tires right here. Good tread detail on it. I'm not seeing any seam lines down the middle of the tires. And then we have our metal shafts for the flaps and ailerons and elevators and all that. All the movable parts if you decide to do that. Alright, so now moving on to our clear parts right here. We get 2 sprues of clear parts. Clear parts do look nice and crystal clear. I am not seeing any issues with anything in the clear parts on this sprue. Alright, and then on our second sprue of clear parts, again, same quality as the last sprue. No issues with any of that. We might have a little bit of a scuff or a scratch on the clear, but none of it is too bad. As you can see, all of that. Then we did have one little piece, not a little piece, but one piece break off of it. So definitely going to need to make sure that that gets protected. Alright, up next we have our first double sprue, and this is going to be some of our bomb detail wheels and also our rockets. As you can see, some nice detail on that. The bomb fins, they do look a little bit thick, but they can be filed down to get your correct thickness on that. We have the different sizes of bombs as well, the 500 and the 250 pounders. Then also our rockets, again, they are in 2 pieces, so you're going to have a seam line down the middle, but the rocket tail ends, the detail on those are absolutely amazing on that, and actually they're drilled out all the way through, so you can see as my finger goes through the middle of them. So again, very nicely done on the bombs on that. Alright, now we have another double sprue. This one has our wing tanks, also the end to our bomb bay tank right there, and more bombs, more pieces for some cabling right in there, an antenna, and some more rockets as well right there. As you can see, very nicely done on that. We do have a little bit of flash on the edge of one of the bombs, but none of the other bombs have it, so that's nice. And then also on these bombs we do have a little bit of raised detail on that as well. So again, very nice. This antenna is going to be very fragile, so be very careful when you are cutting this off of the sprue. Alright, so now we have a sprue with our propeller, our engine cowls. Our engine cowls do have some very nice raised rivet detail on there, as you can see there. And then we have some cockpit detail and also our instrument panel detail right there with some switch and lever detail on those. And then our firewall right here. We'll flip it over to the other side. Really no issues with any of this. You have no ejector pin marks on the cowl flaps. Then also we do have some nice molded in wire detail on that right in here on this one bulkhead for the cockpit. Alright, so now we have the sprue with all of our engine detail on there and all the exhaust wires and everything, and from what I can see so far, the detail on here does look very nice. Even the cylinder heads are really nice cylinder head detail on that, and you have all the holes for your exhaust pipes, so assembly of this should be fairly easy on that. And we have our push rods right there, a couple other detail parts. You do have these which are going to be for the exhaust going on, and then your mounting brackets for your engine and a few other parts. Now with our exhaust, okay, as you can see, they are not drilled out all the way. Or wait, okay, so I stand corrected. So this is the start of the exhaust right here, and then we have the tail end of the exhaust right here. And then we flip it over to the other side, and those are nice and hollowed out, drilled out all the way back. So that is going to look really good when that is attached to that exhaust pipe right there. But all the other detail on here is looking very nice. The exhaust pipes all looking very nice with all the other detail parts that are going to be going on to the engine. So all you really need to do for this engine is adding in some spark plug wires with some lead wire, which when we do another Pratt & Whitney engine on the channel, I'll show you how I do the spark plug wires. Alright, so now we have a large sprue, and it has a lot of our airframe detail and everything going on. Bulkheads, our wing fold area right here with some nice rivet detail on there. Our seat, the backside, we'll flip it over here in a second to check it out. But everything else on here is looking very nice. We do have some very nice rivet detail on this bulkhead right here. I think either a seat or a fuel tank or something like that sits on this one. Then we have some nice switch detail on that piece as well. And then for our cockpit floor, we do have some nice recessed rivet detail, but you're going to have a lot of parts that are going in there to really liven that up and hide a lot of that detail on there. And then on our bomb bay, again, we do have a lot of nice detail in here with our framing and a little bit of wiring detail. If you want to get some reference photos, then you can really liven this up with some lead wire or copper wire and all of that going on there. So definitely I'll be using this and then just adding in the lead wire instead of going with the Edward photo-etch set, which is a Royal painted in the rear end to get done. Alright, so flipping it over to the other side, no real issues with any of the parts that are going to be able or visible. All the ejector pin marks are placed in good locations. Even this piece right here. Alright, so I spoke too early. This is the one piece that has ejector pin marks on an area that you might be able to see. But I am thinking that this is actually the lower rear cabin area, which you really cannot see into when it is all built up. Alright, so we are moving right along, adding in our back seat right here, and then our fuel tank again has some nice rivet detail, and then our torpedo right here again, fairly nice detail for injection molding right there. And then we have some of the parts for our top turret. Our landing gear is in one piece, solid plastic right here, so hopefully that will support the weight of the kit efficiently or sufficiently right there. And then all the other detail parts like our bomb bay door bracket right here. When we flip it over to the other side, everything that is visible, there's no real issues with anything. Even on the seat, we don't have any ejector pin marks or anything like that on there. This part, we do have a couple of ejector pin marks, but I'm not sure on how visible this is going to be because there is a connection point or locator hole right here, and there's ejector pin marks just above it. So I'm thinking that that next part that's going to go in there is going to block off that ejector pin mark. Alright, so now we have our control surfaces going on. A little bit of rivet detail on these, as you can see in the light, when the light hits, looking very nice on that, on all the control surfaces. Maybe a little bit of flash right here. I'm being nitpicky when it comes to that. Again, that just folds right off with a quick hit with your fingernail, and everything else on here looking very nice. No worries about any of this stuff because you're not going to be able to see it. These areas right here where these ejector pin marks are, you're going to have a piece that goes over that to hide that. So again, nice placement of the ejector pin marks. Alright, so now moving on to our fuselage halves, and the detail on here, the rivets, they do seem a little bit oversized for 1/32 scale, but they do seem okay for the most part. I mean, they'll do the job unless you want to go in and fill everything back in and then rescribe everything. But for the most part, they do look okay. Just a little bit on the large side. But the detail on this actually maintains consistency going all the way around versus where the engine cowl really had some issues with the consistency of the detail on there. So again, very nice detail going all the way around on here on both fuselage halves right there. And then we have some switch detail and everything going on for those pieces. Our instrument combing again looks very nice on that. And then our engine cowls for our open position are right here, and you can see all the rivet detail that's on that. Now we flip it over to the reverse side. Alright, so checking on the interior side right here, some decent framing going on. Might be a little bit thick, but again, being nitpicky on that. And then no ejector pin marks on locations that you're going to be able to see. As you can see right there, all the ejector pin marks are put in places that are going to be covered up by other plastic pieces. So very nicely done on that. Even though like back in here, you really can't see much of it anyways. But again, you can see how everything's going to look on the inside with all the framing. You can see the Bombay sidewall detail right there. Alright, so now moving on to our wings, we have the lower end of our wings, the outboard wings right here. Again, nice rivet and panel line detail. Might be a little bit oversized, but it's not by much, so it should be okay for that. And then we have our elevators right here, and then our rudder right here. Then the other piece, and then we have a little bit of framing detail right here. Landing gear doors, again, nice rivet detail on all of those. And when we flip it over to the other side, main concern is with the landing gear doors, and again, no ejector pin marks on any of those. And our crew access hatch right here, again, very nicely detailed on that piece as well. And we are moving on to our last sprue, and this is the top side of our wings right here, and you can see all that nice rivet detail, panel line detail looks very nice on this too. For our outboard and our inboard wing sections, all looking very nice indeed. So no issues with any of this, any of these parts right here. And flip it over to the other side. Really, the only part that you're really going to be able to see are the flap wells. The flap wells, okay, we do have a lot of ejector pin marks that are actually pretty large and in some pretty difficult areas to get to. Right here, if I can get you on camera, as you can see right there. So yes, those might be a little bit of a hassle if you're going to have the flaps down, or there are options for covering these up with some thin styrene sheets, or also using some photo-etch pieces as well. Alright, so that's the Trumpeter TBM-3 Avenger, and like the TBF, the kit looked really nice. There's only like 2 areas that really need work, and that is the front engine cowling. The detail on it just was not consistent. It was good, but just not consistent on the clarity of it. Some of it was recessed, some of it was raised. So definitely going to take some sanding down and rescribing on that piece. Also, the other negative of this kit were the flap wells for the kit with the ejector pin marks on the inside of that. But again, fairly easy fix with some very thin styrene cut to shape to block off those areas, or getting the Edward photo-etch set to replace that whole area right there. But other than that, everything else on the kit looked very nice. Oh, I'm sorry, I almost forgot about the instrument panel. Again, the clear part that has no clear parts on the dial faces. Baffles me why they do that. But you can easily fix that with some UV resin or your ultra glue, or however you decide to do it. But yeah, this kit does build up very nicely. I have built one of these a long time ago. I'm looking forward to building these again to see the difference between skill levels. I do still have pictures of it, I just don't have it anymore, the one that I built. But anyways, that's all I really have to say about this kit. Does look like it's going to be a nice kit, minus a couple detail areas that need to be hit up, but other than that, it's going to be a good one. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope also, if you're on the fence about getting this kit, I hope this helped you make your decision. If you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below, especially if you've built this before. And until next time, have a great day, stay frosty, and happy modeling.